Hey there. So on my recent video, somebody left a comment asking a question, which I thought was interesting. The question was essentially, what makes good good? And also, if there's no heaven and hell, which this person seemed to think there isn't, then is there any imperative to be good? And also, I guess the biggest question, why do bad things sometimes happen to good people? So I think there's a lot to unpack here. And I think one thing I want to say at the start is that I think really there is a hell, but maybe not quite in the way that you would think of it. So I'm going to explain what I mean by that. But to start off, let's think about what good and bad actually is. So good and bad are polar opposites of each other. And when they are polar opposites, that essentially means that they are two sides of one coin. So they're not actually separate from each other. You could say that they both arise together. And that's really what the Tao Te Ching tells us. It says that good creates bad and bad creates good. That's what it means when it says they arise together. One cannot exist without the other. If you think of light and dark, you can kind of understand what it means that one can't exist without the other, because without the comparison of dark to light, then the concept doesn't even really make any sense. And this extends to pretty much everything, like hardness and softness, hot and cold, love and hate, and good and bad. One cannot exist without the other because it simply doesn't make any sense if the other doesn't exist. We can accept that good and bad exist in the world because it is inherent to the world. There is good and bad. You cannot get rid of the bad because it is the opposite side of the coin to good. If you got rid of the bad, you would be getting rid of the good. So what we can do is alleviate our suffering through acceptance. The whole point of the Buddhist path is to alleviate or to eliminate suffering. And the Buddha taught that the way to achieve that is to let go of cravings and desires, and also to let go of aversion. So we're not getting rid of the bad, we are just getting rid of our aversion to it. And at the same time, we're not getting rid of the good, but we are getting rid of the clinging to the good. So that really is our number one task, to eliminate our own suffering. Because until we eliminate our own suffering, we can't truly help others. So we awaken first ourselves, and then we aim to awaken others, to alleviate the suffering, to eliminate the suffering of all sentient beings. We can still direct our energy towards what is good, but we just accept any outcome. And some bad things are inevitable. The grief of loss is inevitable. It happens to all of us. The pain of sickness and dying and death is inevitable. But we can alleviate our suffering around these things through acceptance and not clinging and not judging or setting expectations. And then we focus on alleviating the suffering of others. That is what compassion is. Compassion is the recognition of suffering and having a heartfelt desire to alleviate that suffering. And it is because of our own suffering that we can truly understand the suffering of others. It's how we recognize that suffering. So our own suffering, in a way, leads to compassion for other sentient beings. We can recognize that same suffering in others. And that is essentially where the golden rule comes from, and why the golden rule appears pretty much in some form in every single major tradition. Love your neighbor as yourself. Treat others as you would like to be treated. And essentially, why treating others as you'd like to be treated, loving your neighbor as yourself makes so much sense is because deep down, they are you. As the Upanishads say, those who see all beings in the self and the self in all beings no longer hides in fear. This means that the consciousness behind your eyes is the same as the consciousness behind my eyes. It just appears separate because it is filtered through you, through your limited perspective of the infinite. We are limited, finite forms within the infinite, just like a wave in the ocean, which appears separate, but it comes from the ocean, it will return to the ocean, and in reality it never was separate from the ocean. Now to the concept of heaven and hell. Hell is suffering, and heaven is the cessation of suffering. We reach heaven through mindfulness and compassion and love, and we reach hell through selfishness and anger and hatred. But one thing that I certainly do not believe in is some kind of idea of doing bad things and then burning in hell for eternity, because hell is temporary. Hell is suffering, and suffering can be eliminated. And essentially, what we all are, that underlying consciousness that we all share, is love. It is the divine nature of reality. So, as love is our true nature, it's the true essence of what we are, then anybody who acts in hatred or violence or anger is actually in delusion. They are forgetting their true nature. So why do bad things happen to good people? It's because of delusion. It's because of the forgetting of our true nature. And even if somebody else is causing harm and suffering to somebody who's a very good person, then it's the delusion of the other person that is overspilling and causing harm to the people around them. So delusion leads to hell for ourselves and for the people around us. And the way out of that is love. You cannot fight or hate your way out of hell, because that just creates more hell. Suffering comes from the delusion that we are not love. Why do you think Jesus, when he was being crucified, a horrible way to be killed, he was going through extreme torture and suffering himself, yet he said about the people who were crucifying him, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." He was saying that they are deluded. They are not seeing the truth of reality, and what they are doing is then leading to hell. So a prime example of how we as humanity create hell on earth is the factory farm. 85% of livestock in the UK are factory farmed. In the US, it's 99%. 99% of livestock are inflicted with the most horrible lives. That is literally hell on earth. Can you imagine what it must be like to be one of those animals? To have a life from birth to death of pure torture. And as humanity, we are creating that. And the consciousness behind the eyes of those animals is the same as the consciousness behind our eyes. It's not separate. It is one consciousness. And of course, it's not just the horror that's inflicted upon those animals. It's every kind of suffering that appears throughout the world. And all of it comes from delusion. And that is why our focus now should be on awakening. Awakening to, firstly, eliminate our own suffering, and then working towards the elimination of the suffering of all sentient beings. That is the Bodhisattva vow. The Bodhisattva is the one who has become awakened, and instead of enjoying nirvana, they return to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of all sentient beings. So the question really was, why is something good good? And why should we be good if there is no heaven and hell? And as I've just explained, there is heaven and there is hell, and it is very real, and it exists right now on this planet. So there is very good reason to be good. And really, it is the true nature of what we are. We are goodness. If you want to explore more about how we can wake up to our true nature, then watch this video next.